I was looking at my phone when a message appeared in the family group chat. It simply asked if anyone could help a little, and my chest suddenly felt heavy, even though it was not meant for me. I set my phone down and looked at this month's budget. The emergency fund, the loan payment, and the household expenses already had their own places. No one had asked me for anything, and no one had called me personally. Even so, I already felt responsible, as if it was somehow mine to carry. My name is Clara, a wife and a mother, and for years I believed helping family was part of love. I did not realize that belief was quietly bringing a new problem into my own home. Morning moved as it always did. Mira picked her lunch while Armin read the news, and I quietly noticed that my mind was somewhere else. Before leaving, I checked our savings app. The emergency fund was growing little by little, and every number felt earned. As I closed the app, the family message appeared again. I read it twice and let out a long breath before putting the phone down. My sister called around midday. We talked about work, the weather, and the children, while I quietly waited for the conversation to change. At the end, she quietly said things had been difficult lately. I knew what was coming, and my stomach tightened before I answered. That night, I said nothing to Armand. I washed the dishes, cleared the table, and prepared Myra's school uniform like any other evening. Everything around me looked ordinary. Inside my head, I was already making small decisions on my own, the way I always had. A few days later, I opened our family budget again. My eyes moved from the emergency fund to the small notes of help I had given over the past months. I tried not to think too much about it. I told myself it was only temporary, and that it did not happen very often. But the numbers seemed to tell a different story. Small transfers and unexpected help kept appearing where we had never planned for them. None of the amounts looked very large on their own, but when I imagined them together, I sat quietly for a long moment. I started remembering unexpected bills, small loans, and favors that were supposed to be paid back. Some of them had quietly disappeared from every conversation. The money itself was not what made me uncomfortable. It was the pattern that was slowly becoming impossible to ignore. And the strangest part stayed with me. Most of those decisions had never been asked of me because I had chosen them myself. The more I thought about it, the more questions quietly appeared. I always called it caring, but maybe there was something else hiding underneath. I was afraid of disappointing people before I even answered them. I was afraid they would think I had stopped caring or become a different person. I realized something that made me uncomfortable. Sometimes I offered help before anyone asked because I could not bear the thought of trouble coming. That night, our man looked at me and asked what I was thinking about. I smiled and told him it was nothing, even though it clearly was not. I was not ready to talk about it because I did not understand it myself. I could feel something bothering me without knowing exactly what it was. Life kept moving as usual, but every time I looked at our family budget, I felt two different directions pulling at me. One part of me wanted to protect the future of our little family. Another part still held on to old habits, and I was getting tired of standing between them. The weekend finally arrived, and we took Mira to the park. The afternoon felt calm, and her laughter stayed with us the whole walk. Armand held Mira's hand while I stopped to take a few pictures. From the outside, we probably looked completely fine. The truth was, nothing was wrong between us. There were no arguments, no crisis, and no big problem to explain. Even so, the same conversation kept returning inside my mind. What if my family truly needed help, and I chose to say no? I started feeling guilty before any decision had been made. No one had asked for anything, and nothing had happened yet. That night, I opened our financial notes again. I looked at our emergency fund goal and the list of needs we were still working toward. I sat with one question I had never wanted to ask myself. What if I had spent so much time trying to protect everyone else that I forgot to protect my own home? A few days later, the message I had been waiting for finally arrived. It was private, simple, polite, and strangely familiar. I read the message over and over in silence. They were going through a difficult time and asked if I could help a little, without pressure or demands. I stayed at the dining table with my phone in one hand and my budget notes in the other. Those two small things felt like different worlds meeting in front of me. I kept working through different possibilities in my head. Helping would delay our emergency fund, and saying no might bring guilt first. That night, I did not answer right away and said I needed time to think. The truth was that I was trying to understand what I was feeling. The next day, Mira was drawing in the living room while I sat beside her. My thoughts were still resting on the same question. Without looking up, Mira quietly asked, "Mom, if you're tired, who helps you?" My hands stopped moving, and somehow those words felt heavier than every number I had looked at that week. That night, sleep did not come, silly. Mira's question stayed with me, repeating quietly in my mind. I started noticing something I had missed for a long time. I always looked for people who needed my help, but rarely asked if I was doing all right myself. Memories of earlier years came back to me. I remembered the bills, the hard seasons, and the times our family had to begin again. Back then, very few people really knew what we were carrying. I always tried to look strong and capable, no matter what was happening. Maybe that had become part of the problem. I had grown used to being the one who rescued everyone and forgotten that I was an ordinary person too. At last, I saw what had been bothering me. Helping was never the problem, but losing the peace inside our own home because of it was different. For the first time, I asked myself a quiet question. Does love always have to mean giving up a part of yourself? The next evening, I asked Armand to sit with me for a while. Mira was already asleep, and the house felt unusually quiet. I showed him the message I had received. He read it slowly before setting the phone down. "I know you want to help," he said softly. I nodded because he was right. "But I also know you've been carrying this worry." His words made me stop because someone had finally noticed. I began talking about the guilt I carried. I told him about the pressure and my habit of trying to fix everything. Armand listened without interrupting me. He did not rush to solve anything or tell me I was wrong. Then he quietly said, "We can help, and we can still have limits." For the first time, that idea did not feel selfish to me. We opened our family budget together without rushing. For the first time, the numbers felt like an honest conversation instead of a source of fear. We chose an amount that our family could safely give. It was not shaped by guilt or by the pressure we had been carrying. The number was smaller than I had imagined. Somehow, I sat with that choice and still felt at peace. I replied to the message as honestly as I could. I shared our situation and the help we were able to offer. I pressed send and put the phone down. My heartbeat felt a little faster as I waited for an answer. The reply came after a little while. It was filled with understanding and gratitude, without anger or disappointment. I smiled to myself and looked around the quiet house. So many of the fears I had carried had only been living inside my own mind. A few weeks passed, and our days settled into their usual rhythm. Our emergency fund kept growing little by little, not quickly, but always moving forward. I still help my family whenever I truly can. The difference now is that I no longer feel responsible for saving everyone. I am starting to understand that love does not always look like sacrifice. Sometimes love can look like a healthy boundary instead. If this story feels familiar, maybe you have stood in this place too. Don't forget to subscribe to Clara's Family Journal, because we are learning to build a calmer home one small step at a time. That day, I closed our budget book with a different feeling. Not because every problem was gone, but because I finally understood one thing. When was the last time you felt guilty for choosing your own home's needs first?